Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, hello to everybody joining us for our webinar today with Annabel Bly from The Conversation. Annabel is the Business and Economy Editor, and with Dr. Ian Whitaker, who is a physics lecturer here at NTU, who has written numerous articles for The Conversation. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about what the website is, and kind of Ian's experience of writing for them, and then if you can send in your questions as you're watching, then we can see them, we can answer them for you. So NTU has been a member of The Conversation since 2012, and since then kind of 228 authors have written more than 500 articles for the site. Those articles have been republished nationally and internationally and have reached a readership of more than 18 million people. They've generated 5,500 comments, so it really demonstrates kind of the impact that articles on The Conversation can have and the kind of potential for engagement. So The Conversation's been a real success story for NTU over the last few years, and we're really keen for more people to engage, hence the workshops we've done today and today's webinar. So I'm just going to start off by asking Annabel if you could just tell us briefly how The Conversation works, kind of the author dashboard, and the kind of the Creative Commons license and the process you go through.
Sure. So yeah, The Conversation is a news analysis website, but the way that we differ from every other news website is that all the articles on the site are written by academics. So whatever's going on in the world, going on in the news, we find academics who do research relating to that to explain it, give insight, or share opinions about it that are based on research that they've done over the years. And we also will feature new and interesting research being done in the academic world to our very wide general audience. So not only is everything totally free to read on The Conversation's website, theconversation.com, it's also free for any other website to republish our articles because we publish under what's called a Creative Commons license. So literally any other organisation can take our articles and republish it so long as they credit the fact that it was originally from The Conversation, and they're also not allowed to change what's written in those articles. So because of that, and through that, lots of our articles will get republished on big mainstream news websites like The Guardian, CNN, The Washington Post, New Zealand Herald, but also like websites that you won't ever have heard of, and certainly that like lots of websites that I've never heard of before. Yeah. So that's pretty exciting. So you could write an article for The Conversation and it will appear in India and Singapore and New Zealand. And you can actually track where your article's being read. So as Helen mentioned, we've got this thing called the author dashboard. So one of the kind of requirements of any republisher is that they take a little bit of code with the article, which enables us to track where it's being republished. And that enables the author of the article to track that as well. So you can see how many reads your article gets, you can see where in the world it's being read, which websites are republishing it. It also kind of brings together anyone that's tweeting about it in your dashboard, kind of brings together the comments that you might receive on your article, that kind of thing.
And so through the author dashboard as well, the authors can see the changes that have been made, can't they, to their articles? And yes, they can press the approval button so nothing gets published until...
Yeah, so a kind of key part of our editorial process is that, so the article will be written by the academic author. They'll submit a draft to their editor. So if it's business, it's most likely to be me. I will make some suggested edits or comments on the article. We've got like a custom built editing system, which is similar to like Google Docs. So everything kind of saves in real time. And a key part of our process is that we won't publish an article before the author has checked over those edits and approved the piece.
Great, thank you. So Ian, you've written, I think I counted about 14 articles for the conversation, and you were recently the recipient of the first Professor Sir Paul Curran Award given out by the Conversation for Excellence in Academic Communication. So congratulations again. So kind of, can you remember sort of your first article and what the process has been like and your sort of experience over the last couple of years?
Absolutely. So I mean, my first article was talking about flat Earth and trying to debunk the flat Earth conspiracy theory, which was quite a big topic, I think, for a first article. It was written in, I'd say, about 4 or 5 hours. Published the next day after the edits had been done the first day, and yeah, it was just a sort of whirlwind experience. Really, really good. And then you start looking at this author dashboard, and you see the number of reads start going up and up and up, and you just watch this graph just going straight through the roof. And by the time it hit something like 100,000 on the first couple of days, I was just like, something's happening with this. And then it got translated into Indonesian and French as well, I think. But yeah.
Through the other conversations.
Through the other conversations, yeah. So it was quite interesting to get this email saying, we'd like your permission to translate this into Indonesian. It's like, I have no idea if you've changed it or not, but yeah, go for it.
And have you found it kind of easier as you've written articles? Do you find you're getting quicker, or no, you want less amends from the editors?
It depends. I'd say it very much depends on the topic. Some of them I can write really quickly. Some of them, because I write quite a lot with other authurs, it takes a little bit longer because we end up talking about it and trying to say, is this the best way of getting this across? Is this what we're trying to say? So I mean, it can take anywhere from a day to several weeks to write, depending on how urgent it is and how much we've got on. So obviously fitting it around lectures and all the other university work has to be taken into consideration.
And so so you co-author. That's another thing that you can do for the conversation, is that if you're researching with somebody else, you can co-author a piece as well.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite good.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have had one question in already, which is great. So, so is everybody allowed to publish on the Conversation? And do you have any kind of pre-selection process for who can write?
So our sort of entry level for writing on the Conversation is PhD candidates. Although even as having said that, there are PhD researchers if you don't have like a university position. So I'm aware that there are some lecturers like lecturers in some universities who don't necessarily have a PhD because they might have kind of got into academia through a different route. So anyone who is an academic with a university affiliation can write, starting with PhD researchers.
So do they need to be kind of active researchers to write, or?
It sort of depends. So people need to, we only let people write on topics that they do research relating to. It doesn't mean that you have to have done like a specific research paper on the topic that you're writing on. But I don't know, maybe it's useful to use Ian as an example in that you broadly research the field of space.
So all my papers are sort of space-based. Yeah, absolutely.
But not everything that you've written about on the Conversation is something that you've necessarily done like a peer-reviewed paper on.
I'd be laughed at for putting a flat Earth peer review article in.
Okay, great. So I kind of mentioned earlier that NTU authors have written kind of well over 500 articles, and some of our highest read pieces have been kind of pieces on David Bowie's eyes, eye colour, and things about playing video games, passion. A lot of our science pieces have done really well. So Annabelle, what do you think makes a good article?
I mean, so many different things. I mean, the examples you gave are pretty varied in themselves. So, I mean, the David Bowie's eye colour article is quite a good example of something that was really topical at the time that it was published. So it was published, I think, the day after David Bowie passed away. Which was a massive news story at the time, and it was also a very different way of talking about this thing that was in the news. And that's kind of, I think, one of the real strengths of the conversation is that we're able to cover news stories in very different ways to kind of mainstream media. So your standard news website would run like an obituary of David Bowie, maybe a kind of a look back at his greatest hits or something like that. This was kind of totally different to that, and by someone who is they're not an expert in music, they're an expert in sort of eyes, I guess. And for them it was probably quite easy to write a sort of 700, 800 word article on sort of why people would have different eye colours. So sort of back to the question, what makes a good article? Anything that's going on in the news, if you can sort of think of what is kind of like the kind of front page news, and then particularly something that's like comes at it from a different angle. So, or something that's like counterintuitive to what the kind of standard thinking is, or standard way of covering an issue. And then, I mean, science does very well. So if there are any science academics watching, you're well placed. I mean, space is very popular.
Everybody loves space.
Animals, we find animals.
Animals are very popular. For the more businessy stuff, like anything to do with happiness, like what are the keys to happiness? What are the keys to like a work-life balance, or issues around equality and inequality do very well. If you've got an opinion, don't be afraid. Like, strong opinions are great as long as they're backed up by research.
Do you remember any from your section, any articles that have done particularly well, or a favourite that you've worked on, kind of why you think it did so well?
So one of my favourites has to be working with a guy who researches happiness, writing about his experience of being unhappy, and why he decided to quit his job and cycle to Bhutan. So, I mean, it's a topic that everyone can relate to. What are the questions like, does more money make you happy, and what does research show makes you happy in life? But also it had like the personal element to it. It had his personal story. It might not be the case that your research that you have a personal story to tell with your research, but you might be able to share personal stories from people that you've spoken to as part of your research. That's also a great thing to do.
And so we've had another question in. So how quickly do you have to write an article for the conversation? I think that's something that people are generally concerned about, because people are busy. They worry that if we send them something, it has to be done kind of there and then. Does it always need to be done that fast, or? Yeah,
so some stories do need like a really rapid turnaround, and we do kind of commission and then publish stories within a day, within a working day. But probably the majority of stories that I do have like a 2-week lead up to them. And that's kind of ideal for me as an editor, for someone to get in touch with. Either they know of an anniversary coming up, or they know of an event coming up, whether it's like, something like the Women's World Cup on at the moment, or it's the 50th anniversary of like the Apollo moon landings in July, this month now. Get in touch ahead of time, and then we can basically take as much time as is needed for the article to be ready.
absolutely. It just makes more sense if you know there's an anniversary coming up to do it in advance rather than try and do it on the day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think one of the things that is helpful is that because they're short articles, and if they're topics, and if you find this in, it's a topic that you know about anyway, often doesn't require any additional research. Do you find it kind of easy? You know about it, so you can just it's kind of simpler article than you used to writing.
Yes and no. I mean, the main thing is getting that public interest element, and for that you have to usually do a little bit of extra research for sort of the odd story that might be related to it that will actually hook the public in. I would say as well, it's things like getting the articles, getting whatever you need as the evidence that you're linking to. That takes quite a bit of time, I would say, more than actually knowing the stuff. It's where's the proof of what I know.
I'm finding the links. Yeah. Great. And so when it comes to pitching to the conversation, so Ian, you must have pitching down to kind of a T now.
I still get rejected every so often for pitches.
That's interesting to know kind of what you find works, and kind of, Annabelle, what your top tips. So what do people need to do if they want to pitch for you, pitch to you? And Ian, kind of how you find putting a pitch together and what works and what doesn't.
Well, I guess like maybe it's helpful to say that we do reject a lot of pitches, and we reject good pitches because we just don't have the time.
All of mine are good.
We're a relatively small team of editors, and there is loads going on. But I would say it's great. It's still good to pitch just so that we know about you. So we know that the thing with the news is it comes around again and again. The same issues kind of crop up. So don't kind of be discouraged if your pitch doesn't get accepted. Just kind of keep plugging away and let us know if you've got or if you see something else in the news that relates to what you wanted to pitch. But in terms of what makes a good pitch, so we generally want about 200 to 300 words, kind of summing up what is the story, and really this word story is important. So like what story are you trying to tell, and really think about what your angle is on the issue. So I didn't explicitly say at the start, but our articles are very short. They're like 600 to 800 words. So you don't have room in that to say everything there is about, like the Women's World Cup. Like what is the specific argument that you want to make? Just make that really clear, and make clear why you're the person to write about it. So say you wanted to talk about the gender pay gap in football. Have you done research about it, or do you know about research on the issue that you can point to?
Okay, great. And Ian, any kind of top tips from you?
For a pitch, make it interesting. I can't hammer that one home enough. I talk to other people and they say, oh yeah, do you want to have a look at this pitch I wrote? And how do I get through this? So keep it interesting. Imagine you were talking in the pub to somebody and you say exactly what you put in your pitch. Are they going to be interested? That is the best way of looking at it. So make sure you've got your own angle to it, as you've already mentioned. So a different point of view is always going to be what's good. So for example, with the Falcon Heavy launch that was last year, my article on it was not, oh great, it landed. It was, what's the environmental impact of sending a car into space and leaving it as debris going around the Earth? So you get that different point of view. And I got lots of hate mail about that.
So that's something we'll come on to in a little bit, is kind of how you deal with the reaction to it. But I will say that when it comes to pitching, if anybody needs any help with kind of formulating pitches and the angle in their work, then the press office are kind of here to help you put together kind of those bullet points and those key messages. Another question we've had in, so does the conversation let us know what kind of articles that you're looking for, and is there kind of a monthly plan or a yearly plan in place?
Unfortunately, we're not as organised to have a yearly plan of what's coming up, but we do send out, every day we send out an expert request, which has varying sort of timeframes on it. So the expert request goes to all the press officers of member universities of the conversation, and sometimes it will be, so it basically has the stories that we have ideas that we're chasing on, and that could be something that's like really immediate that we need to publish this week or tomorrow, or it will be stuff that's coming up. So and we also sometimes put like general requests in it, like we want to hear from people who research Saudi Arabia, like, because we don't have many, so that kind of thing.
Sorry, just add to that point. If you are interested in writing, let the press office know who you are, because otherwise you don't get those emails, unless it's like your research page is specifically the exact question that's being asked. So make sure you let the press office know what areas you can do, or have some description saying what you're interested in, what your specialties are. That's
a really good point, actually, because we do get the expert alert every day, and we kind of sift through it and kind of have a look at who we know who might be interested in writing those. And it's really important that we know, because the opportunities go fast, because there are, you say, 70 member universities, and there are sometimes only 5 or 6 topics for that day, and so they go very quickly. It's really important for us to know who we've got, who's interested, and who can write what. Okay, so talking about kind of the impact of writing now for the conversation, and kind of why you do it. So we know from our authors that it's led on to kind of other media interviews and kind of invites to conferences, new collaborative projects, and kind of contact from other researchers interested in their work. So Ian, kind of what sort of impact has writing for the conversation had?
First of all, just the sort of competitive one. I love seeing the views go up and comparing it to other people. But that's just me. It's had the impact. I've had quite a few radio interviews. I've had my only live TV interview as well, which was France 24 News. Thankfully, I did not have to speak French, otherwise that could have gone so badly. But yeah. That was on the first day of spring, so it's from the equinox, talk about equinoxes and solstices and how the Earth changes in its precession as it goes around the sun. So yeah, they wanted somebody to talk about the first day of spring. I was like, yeah, sounds good. So there's been plenty of that. Some of the articles that I've written, it's kind of given me inspiration on public talks to give as well. So I've ended up giving public talks at NTU about some of the articles I've written, and that's got a lot of the public indoors. You can really explain to them in person, which is great. And yeah, it's actually really good for if you've got an idea, you start writing about it to the public, and then suddenly you think, oh, actually, I could turn this into a research topic, and you can go from there. But yeah.
And Annabelle, have you got any kind of other examples of authors you've worked with and things that they've gone on to do from writing?
Yeah, I mean, I've had authors tell me that they were invited to talk on like select committees about what they wrote about, and there was one case where he was like, I thought he was quite high profile, so I kind of replied to say, oh, like how. I think I basically wanted to establish whether or not it was the conversation article that led to the invitation, and he just replied saying. Yeah, when I asked them how they found out about me, they mentioned the conversation article, which was on the exact topic. It was like, what impact will Brexit have on UK financial services? And so that was exactly because, people Google stuff, and that's how they find experts to kind of whatever it is that they're looking for. I know a guy who got him asked to write a book off the back of one of his articles by the Royal Society of Chemistry. Yeah, back to the question of like what makes a good article. Like, I think having fun with your topic is like something that you should think about, because so this guy, he's does like physical chemistry, and he wrote this article basically kind of pontificating how much protein, like basically what Spider-Man would need to eat for breakfast to produce the amount of web that he produces. So like totally silly. I think it probably came out around the time of like a Spider-Man film, was from a few years ago. And yeah, basically worked out he had to eat like a crazy amount of eggs to create the amount of protein that we needed to create that amount of web. But then the Royal Society of Chemistry asked him to write a book more broadly on kind of superhero powers and the chemistry around them. So that's pretty fun.
So it can lead on to all sorts of things. And again, if anybody has written for the conversation and has had an impact, let us know about it so we can kind of record it. And so something we touched on earlier was that kind of reaction to articles. I think it can be quite daunting for researchers, particularly early career researchers, to have an article out there that isn't a kind of peer-reviewed academic paper. It's just kind of makes them feel a bit exposed.
Yeah.
And having the function to comment underneath, I think, makes people kind of worried. So Annabelle, do you encourage authors to engage with the comments, and what do they do if they're receiving negative comments?
Yeah. Well, I guess there's no pressure to engage with comments if you don't want to, but we definitely find that when authors do engage with comments, it kind of sets a much better tone, because I think with a lot of online communication, people forget that there are actual humans involved. And when authors get in there early to respond to comments, it's super helpful and leads to much more kind of constructive discussion. Saying that, we do have a very strict comment policy. So comments have to be constructive and they have to be backed up with evidence. And if they don't meet that criteria, we will delete them. So yeah, I think I'd say be prepared to, sort of argue back with people if they're making constructive arguments. But if it's just like trolling, you can just, there's like a report abuse button, just hit that, don't bother engaging with them, and we'll delete it. So
I don't know whether your experience, Ian, is that with the audience of the conversation, the comments tend to be a bit more sensible than perhaps other media outlets.
Sometimes.
So how have you dealt with kind of maybe more negative comments, and have any
if it's
useful?
negative in a constructive way,
Yeah.
that's absolutely fine. It's like, oh yeah, no, actually I've done the calculations, you are right, this part of the article is slightly, and doesn't describe the whole story or something like that, or you would write, we're only looking at focusing on this one little area, and that's fine, absolutely no problem with that. It's when you get the less intellectually stimulating comments, should we say? Because remember, of course, if it's republished anywhere, that's got its own comments policy, and so just don't go there. Just don't look at them. But you can get comments on your article wherever it's republished. You can get it on the conversation. And then there's also the respond to an expert button, something like that, isn't it, where they can email you directly?
Oh, okay.
So it's like ask the author, and so you can get an email request that way. I've had a few that way. They're generally okay. If somebody goes to the effort of that, it's generally a constructive, or it's like, can you tell me about this? Yeah. Can you help me with this particular issue? And that's great. Yeah, you deal with it by just getting used to it, I think. Like that first article, it was...
Flat Earth is like...
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was a mistake for the first one, should we say, poking that particular hornet's nest. But yeah, you just get used to it. And then you're like, yeah, I'm only going to take notice of the comments that are actually sensible. I don't... If I click the report abuse button, I'll just be there all day.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. I would just say from each of you, what would be your kind of one top tip for anybody who's writing for the conversation for the first time?
Make it something that's timely. If something's coming up, make it, put your angle on it. So if it's something that's happening in a week's time, think about it beforehand, get your thoughts together, make it interesting. That is the most important part, the interesting part.
Well, I'd definitely say I'll be keen to emphasise don't write a draft of an article before you speak to an editor. So if you've got an idea, try to sum it up in 200 words. As Ian just said, like, what's the most interesting thing that you can hone in on? What is your angle? And then send that over in a pitch to an editor. And yeah, if there's an event, try to think ahead. So if there's an event coming up, or and that could be, if it's a political event, like we know that sort of July, like is it week of July 22nd that we're going to have a new prime minister in place, like stuff like that, where it's like 2 to 3 weeks in advance. What do you want to say about it, instead of waiting for it to happen already, because then you're kind of already on the back foot.
Great. Thank you both. I think that's been really interesting. Hopefully the people who joined us have found it interesting as well. The link will be available afterwards that we will share out. And if you're in any doubt of what makes a good conversation story, or you need any help at all, then contact the press office. All our details are on the news area of the website, and we'd be happy to help. So thank you very much.